everyone, welcome back to Dev Interrupted. I'm Ben Lloyd Pearson, Director of Developer Relations here at Linear B. Today I'm joined by Luis Vega, an engineering manager at Bloomberg. Luis, it's great to have you here today.
No, it is my pleasure to join you. And I'm pretty excited to be in this bubble.
A dome, please.
Dome. I'm sorry.
So you were recently recruited to lead a team that owns, revamps, and creates applications for Bloomberg's JavaScript framework, which is used by thousands of developers across the company. And your goal is to develop internal tools that follow many of the same application development, research, and UX design principles that are used in Bloomberg's client-facing tools. So from what we understand, the challenge was not only that there were very few internal tools at the company to aid you in that process, but the ones that existed weren't very well embraced by developers, like even including yourself. So I want to dive into what it took to revamp the internal applications at Bloomberg and the path that you followed to become a manager along the way. I think that sounds like a pretty interesting story. But before we jump in, because we may have an audience that's not as familiar with Bloomberg, can you tell us just what is Bloomberg?
Yeah, absolutely. So you probably heard from Bloomberg if you go to like our news or if you happen to be on our Bloomberg TV channel, but that is actually not what we do. Those are just information sources that feed to the Bloomberg terminal. So Bloomberg, a main product is called the Bloomberg Terminal, and it really powers financial professionals around the world. If you really want to do serious stuff in finance, you need a Bloomberg terminal. Basically how it works. The best way to think about it, imagine your phone and you have obviously tons and tons of applications from your App Store or Play Store, whatever. The Bloomberg terminal has over 20,000 applications. We call them functions. You're going to hear me say that a lot, installed into the Bloomberg terminal on the get-go. So somebody with access to the terminal can basically type 1 to 4 letters and run one of these applications. The internal tools use the same technology. Talk about eating your own food. So in order to make an internal application, you can also, we use the same technology and the same things, and we put it in the Bloomberg terminal. So employees at Bloomberg actually have free access to the Bloomberg terminal, little employee perk there. So that's a little bit what we do in engineering. So that is the core of the company there.
Great. And I love, this is going to be horrible to say, but I love hearing about tools that developers ignore. As a former developer who used to love to find ways to circumvent coding standards, I want to hear a little bit more about the state of internal tooling when you joined, and why developers, including yourself, fail to embrace them across the organization.
Yeah. So we have to dial back the clock to like 2000, maybe 17, 18, right? Since engineering teams in software infrastructure, let's say they were providing frameworks for other teams to build these tens of thousands of applications. Sometimes they were like, oh, but we also need, an internal tool to manage our particular framework or whatever it is. So engineers will build an application as part of a managing kind of like their framework. But it was more of we need that tool rather than really carefully plan it from the beginning. So the same team that, provide a service or a particular API to the whole rest of the company was building these tools as a side project per se, or as a need basis, let's call it like that. At the time, I was a senior engineer in Bloomberg at charts and data visualization. We had to interact a lot with software infrastructure because of the tech that we were using, all of the widgets and the graphing applications. So we had to use a lot of these side tools. And I've been very vocal all my career, I think. So whenever we see something, you put a ticket, is my saying. So I ended up dealing with a lot of tickets of these tools with this software infrastructure counterpart, to the point that I was known for being the person demanding things. And this is how it all began. So that was the state of the world, kind of like for some years at Bloomberg.
Yeah, and I imagine developers do not respond well to demands, right?
Well, the response varies depending on how you ask, for sure. But yeah, so to continue on your question there. So what happened was the manager of these tools, I had a relationship with him, and then he saw me in the elevator one day and he said, Luis, I was talking about you. I was like, okay, this is not going to be good. But then he surprised me and he said, we've been thinking about building a team dedicated to build these internal tools. Because you're right, we had it. You're showing us that we can do better. And then he literally offered me to lead the team to build the tools that I kept not complaining, but opening requests about with proper support, full-time support. And I thought, this is an excellent opportunity. Maybe we can really turn this around, right? So after a lot of hesitation, or like personal hesitation that I went over in my talk, I decided to do it. And then I started this team, right? And then we started like saying, what if the internal tools are awesome? What if we actually put the time and engineering resources and UX resources to make them great? And that's how the whole dream started. We started with a small team. Actually, it was me. Two pre-trainees, fantastic pre-trainees, by the way, and a UX person. And that's a little bit of the secret superpower that we found out. We were able to work with a UX colleague of ours that she had a lot of technical background. And she was like, from day one, a member of the team. So we treat her as an engineer, right? She was part of our sprint plannings, sprint reviews, all of the rituals. And we started really designing these tools, interviewing our engineers, right? One of the things that was a missed opportunity is that these tools were for our own colleagues. We know them. We have lunch with them. So we actually said, hey, why don't we just book meetings in their calendars and let's meet with them. Let's see what their pain points are. So we actually started exploring that. And before we started doing all of the development, we started like investigating what we were going to do. Then we came up with the whole idea of the mascots, which is, if you haven't watched the talk, watch it. Lead dev, sorry. Okay, so the mascot development, the idea here, so in Bloomberg, I mentioned you have all these tens of thousands of applications, right? We call them functions. The name of these functions is 1 to 4 letters. That's it. I'll give you an example. GP, graphical platform, and then it gives you a price graph and things like that. They're letters. We call them mnemonics. So our idea was, instead of using cumbersome mnemonics, let's create words words that people understand and remember. So our first application was called Jack for Lumberjack, because it was an application to bring logs from our customers. Whenever they have errors, whatever, we can bring the logs into engineers' desks so they can analyze them. So we call them Jack. Why Jack? Because it's Lumberjack. And the mascot is like this very cute lumberjack that was inspired on one of our colleagues, actually. The lumberjacks bring the logs, which are the customer logs, whatever. It was like a little cheesy explanation to support it.
I love cheeky names like that.
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
But the point is, now people are talking about Jack all over the company.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, have you used Jack? Oh, they have stickers. They have a mascot. And then the engineers start being like, I developed Jack. While all of the other engineers were developing letters. So it really created this identity and this passion on our engineers to be like, we need to build, Jack has to be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you're effectively turning engineers into like celebrities almost within your company, right?
It is true, yes, because they started getting so much exposure, and recognition of like, and Bloomberg has a lot of ownership. So people already have the whole concept of like somebody owns something. So when you start owning the stickers that like managers and like start having in their laptops, you're right. They start getting popular, which is a great thing.
So we started, have an OKR for the number of management people that have your sticker on their laptop.
I definitely did a little desk drops. So I will like identify the desk of like the top head departments in engineering and come early and like drop some stickers there, see what happens. Sometimes they stick on their laptops. I'm like, what is this cute doctor? So anyway, so that was the idea. And then again, the superpower of the UX, I have to say, because people were used to the applications we had internally, but then you really come and hit them out of the blue with this well-designed, kind of like my manager used to say, look, everybody, and not to, throw shade on any cars, but this is what he said, everybody's used here to like all Toyota Camrys. And you're building like a Lamborghini, like with top design, with all of the tools, bells and whistles. And we're like, okay, I guess that's what we're building. We're building a Lamborghini of an application. And so we started with Jack, and then it was widely popular. And then we said, okay, let's keep revamping all of our tools. And then we're rapidly starting doing the same process for all of our portfolio of tools. And before you know it, you fast forward the clock 1 year and a half, 1 year. And then we had recruited top engineers because they get like, oh, I want to be part of that team.
Of course.
That's what I want to be.
How do I get my own sticker?
Right, exactly. Like I want to own my own thing, right? And I really thought I made it when when I saw one of our engineers having the sticker on back of their cell phone. I was like, that's it.
That's
If
wonderful.
they're bringing this to brunch, they said we made it. They're talking about all these applications in their daily lives. This is amazing.
This reminds me a lot of like the lumberjack example in particular of how like a lot of open source communities sort of brand themselves, you know? So it's like, I don't know if you're familiar with like the concept of inner source where you take like the practices of open source internally into a company. But I love that. And it's such a, like, it's silly, but it's such a motivating factor because like I said, you're creating this shared identity that you can then celebrate and that you can then elevate people who are involved with that. And I mean, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it was good. The mascots came from another colleague of ours, a visual designer, and he does amazing visuals for work and outside of work.
Nice.
And then he had a good relationship with the manager. I met him. We really kick it off. And then, all he wants is to make sure that he's building cool mascots and that people can see them. So when we told him, we can put in the stickers and everything, he got really excited. Now, the word got out. So obviously other managers were like, whoa, have you seen what Luis is doing with his team? Who is your designer? I'm like, no, don't touch my designer. So they talked to him and then he became really popular.
Yeah.
So you can imagine today, I believe he has built over 50 mascots all over the company. He has a backlog of mascots. It's hard to get one now.
Wow.
But the real story here is that this idea of creating a personal identity for what you build has really spread across the company.
Yeah.
And I really think that that's what pretty about it, because it's not like nobody's taking the credit of the idea, but it's more like as a culture, it's evolving towards that identity and that prideness of like, this is my code and it's good code, So I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. So we talk to a lot of people who work in platform engineering on this podcast and at our company. Would you classify like this work as a form of platform engineering, or is it different in some way?
So particularly what I do is tools for developers to be more productive in their entire life cycle. Coding, finding documentation, finding code samples, all of that discovery phase. The releasing part, knowing all of the assets they own, making sure they release consistently, making sure they don't forget one, and the debugging side. So obviously the part of you deployed everything and things crash, we built a lot of applications for that. And in between, we have a team obviously dedicated for all the ticket management. We actually on the ticket platform that Bloomberg uses. So it is definitely, I don't know if it's platform, but it's more, I would call it like developer life cycle.
Okay. Or developer experience.
Developer experience, which is the name of the department.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. We got there. So I want to touch on a comparison that you made a little bit earlier. You're in a world where everyone at Bloomberg is driving Toyota Camrys. I think you said the Lamborghini dealership opens up next door. Obviously, driving a sports car like that, if you're used to just driving an automatic Camry every day, leveling up to that higher quality, to that deeper engineering, the more complex like feature set. Did you have to do a lot of training to sort of like level up engineers that were using some of this stuff, or did you try to make it the Lamborghini that's as easy to drive as a Camry kind of thing?
So yeah. We definitely value, making it easy to onboard. But as you said, you had to have some learning. So we actually did something for this that I want to comment on. And we are big on chats in Bloomberg. We have a chat for everything. We use our own platform, Instant Bloomberg. Think of your instant messaging. We also use it internally. It's also an external product of Bloomberg, so I can talk about it. But we have chats, technical chats for absolutely every community and stuff in Bloomberg. So what we did in our applications is we created a very a reusable component basically called live support. So on the top right of any one of our applications, you have this live support button, you click it, And it's kind of like a little bit of a clickbait because it automatically adds you into the support chat for that given application. And now you're there in a community of people that are that know this application. Going back to the popularity and the rockstar engineers, they're the ones that are answering all the questions because they're the ones that know. So when somebody wanted help, they have this live support button and now they're talking to their colleagues. And that created multiple things, right? It created our engineers to be much better at communication by answering questions from their users. It created a community of people that train itself on how to do things because the third time you ask something in a week, people know. We're like, yeah. People that are not of your team start answering the questions. They're like, nice. Now, they maybe we should hire them. Maybe we should recruit them, right? So it created that community base. So yes, there had to be some learning, but I think we really use what we call our support chats as a self-growing community of experts of each application. And kind of like a subreddit that like becomes expert on how to shop best at Costco.
Right.
The Costco subreddit.
Every niche question you can imagine, there's someone there.
Exactly. And obviously the history is there, and then there are like facts. And so yes, there is a learning curve, but we leverage our community for it.
Yeah. So is there some sort of extrinsic like motivating factor for people to answer questions, or is it simply just like, do you have a culture of people wanting to be experts and wanting to lead and just sort of intrinsically wanting to make that, that effort to help out colleagues?
That's a good question. I really think it's the culture. I really think in Bloomberg, we're just so ingrained on helping each other and on teamwork that if you know something, you just want to share it. But it's a good question. I wonder the people that participate a lot, if they have some other motives on them. But really, like, I participate in the things that I know, and like, I do it because I think it's the culture. Yeah, I know the answer to that. So why would I keep it to myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have a culture of like sharing.
That's really awesome. Like, do you know where the source of that culture is by any chance? I mean, it's a large company, so
I really think it's ingrained in the way. Well, I'm going to be a little cheeky here, but I really think it's what Michael Bloomberg believes because, he always like promotes talking to colleagues, and you see this in the form of the elevators not stopping in every floor, and then you have to see people, and as cheeky as it's up, I can attest to that because I got my managerial role because my manager saw me in the elevator. Years later, he confessed to me that he had a second person in mind, and I was actually number 2 in the list, but he saw me first.
And you convinced him while you were in the elevator.
That
must have been a good elevator pitch.
Right. So it's fine. I accepted. I mean, his number 1 pick is an awesome colleague of mine, but it worked. So I think it's ingrained in the culture, and we have a pantry where everybody like gets food and talks, and it is well seen, and people get known, I guess.
Maybe we can just step back for one moment. And so let's go back to when you set out to create this tooling. So what was the biggest or the most important thing that you felt like you had to tackle when you were first like approaching this problem?
I think the first thing that we told the team and we told ourselves was, we're not going to code. Don't code anything. We need to understand what is the problem so we can come up with a solution. Too often in engineering, you want to answer before you have a proper question.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like we really, and it was a little bit of a tough sell at the beginning. I remember my managers were like, but why are you not coding? I'm like, no, I need to interview people. And it was literally like a roadshow. Like, we had meetings back to back with the UX person we were working with.
I've actually had a lot of success with roadshows in the past.
Yeah, and we started interviewing. So when we understand the question, the problem, then we said, why don't we just build that solution and start from there? So we started with a like very simple MVP of like, hey, let's download the logs. Let's make sure we can bring the logs through to be able to open them. And then we started from there and building from there. Different organizations have different experience working with UX, all over the spectrum, I bet. But what we have really found extremely successful, and I really call it a superpower for us, is to be able to ingrain them as part of the team and not use them as consultants. Like, we'll send these documents to UX. No, get them in the meetings, get them involved. And if they lack a little bit of the technical expertise, get them a little bit on board, like get them to understand what's happening. Get them in the chat again of like where all the PRs are flying by and like they can see what's going on. Yeah, I think that was very useful.
Nice. And then you talked about a little bit of resistance from leadership around like how you approached your first step. Was there anything else that you felt like some resistance, or that you had to spend a little extra time getting them on board with this effort? Like, and maybe this happened like long before you even kicked off this initiative.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's gonna at some point talk about ROI,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so we're investing these resources. What are we getting back, right? And I feel like more than resistance, that was a very burning question. Because at the end of the day, we had the opportunity of creating a roadmap and decide what was more important, if A was more important than B. But I knew that I had to show to management that what we did made sense and that it's successful. Now, with that in mind, we took advantage of a lot of usage tracking technologies that we have at Bloomberg to make sure that users are running the application, what features are they using, what workflows are they following, and the usage numbers. And then really took advantage of my years in charts to put everything on a chart. I'm on the tagline, like your status in the IB chat, my status was put a chart on it. And yeah, I'm very visual. So I made sure that everything we do, we're measuring, so that when we release it, and look, not every application was a success, right? But when it wasn't, it was clear that it wasn't, and maybe we needed to shift gears to something that was skyrocketing. We had to migrate a couple old applications to new ones, and we used charts to show like literally using dropping of the old one and coming to the new one. We had a lot of features to made certain workflows faster, and we measured that to the point that we had a chart of hours of engineers saved by going a new workflow, like the new workflow versus the old one. And we had like a big number that keep growing. So I think that was one of the things that I anticipated to be resistant.
I'm actually curious, how are you measuring the number of hours saved?
Yeah, well, this one was very easy. I'll explain. So you had to, in order to release code, they had to like select the stuff that they're moving, they pick their deployment, like a number of steps. Think like 3 steps that they had to do. But a lot of them became a little boilerplate, and you can actually derive the information a lot. So it became more like, like checking a form when you enter somewhere in America, like everything has a form, and it's like, are you guys really processing this paper, or it's just paperwork? It felt like that, and we could derive it. So now we created a quick way of doing that, which was a single click. You pre-fill the information, like the format where to parse the data once, and then you just click it. So what we did is we released it to half of the population, and we start measuring the time that they took before, for months before we had this feature. So we knew that the average of creating this process was about, let's say, 40 seconds. But in the new one, it was instant. So it was like, we were generous and said, okay, we take 2 seconds to process it. So let's say 2 seconds better to 40. And then we just measure, we basically backtest on how many times this request used to happen before we created it. And we start measuring the new one. So you interpolate, supersede the graphs, and then you can see how much time was spent before and after. So this one was a very straightforward. One of the few that was straightforward.
Yeah. Have you been able to do anything to tie what you've done to like the quality of your engineering? Like, are you shipping more reliable code? Are users happier? Or have you seen anything like that?
Definitely the user happiness, I think, is a big one. And we do have this document where we keep all of the quotes that come from users that we capture in all the communication channels.
Yeah.
And we're very eager to display this to management every time there are questions about things. I'm like, oh, this person that started with you at Bloomberg 25 years ago, look what they have to say about the application. So definitely customer feedback is huge. And one of the things I really, really learned is like my first 7 years at Bloomberg, I was working on client-facing applications, right? Hundreds of thousands of users per day. All of the Bloomberg users in the world use it. And that felt great. But the feedback loop is harder because customers are not in your company. They're busy doing work. Sometimes they give feedback.
Yeah.
But when I moved to engineering tools, I really thought, oh, am I not working on the bigger thing, right? Like, how am I going to get that customer feeling? But the reality is when you work on engineering tools, you get the feedback loop right away. So that was very gratifying. And I guess customer feedback, to answer your question there. And then on the code quality, we definitely have tools and things at Bloomberg to measure crashes and things like that. So we can show that we're good.
Performant. Yeah.
Performant.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, it's a wonderful breakdown of, the technical challenges, how you rolled out these changes. Well, let's transition to talk a little bit about your personal journey, because from my understanding, as a part of, we already talked about how you transitioned to management through all of this. Other than an elevator conversation, how did that transition start? Like, was this project that you were engaged in? Like, was that sort of the catalyst, or was there something before that sort of kicked off that transition? Like, how did you make that start?
Yeah. So I wanted to be a software engineer since I was like 10, right? Like I asked my mom for like a Visual Basic 6 at the time.
I think I wanted to be a police officer or something when I was 10.
Well, I won't tell you what I wanted to be when I was 5, but let's stay at the 10-year mark. And then she didn't. She gave me a skateboard. She's like, you need friends.
You're going to be a pro skater.
Yeah. She's like, no, you need friends. You get out of the house. I was like, okay. But my grandma gave me the book. So when I started as a software engineer, that was my dream, right? Like I love coding, and to this day, I really, really love coding. But my managers and the people like my mentors started seeing that there was a leadership aspect on me that they wanted to explore. And they started putting the seed in me of like, what if you develop people? I'm like, yeah, I think I would love that. But I want to code something. So it took me a while to really make that decision. And honestly, when I got the offer to lead the team in the elevator, I really thought about it. I'm like, am I ready for this? But after talking to a lot of people, I made the conscious decision of changing to a managerial path. So obviously, you still need to be very technical, but your goal now is to lead engineers and not code for them. So I think I made that decision, a little bit of like an intentional one. Okay, let's become very good at this. I'm probably not good at all. And then I really started there. When we started seeing building these applications and seeing the customer feedback and the response on our team and my managers, I was like, okay, I guess this is it. I'm going to keep investing and doing this. And what I really found that I didn't know it was going to happen, it was that satisfaction of seeing my team grow.
Yeah.
And that was so amazing. I had an intern in charts. When he came back to full-time, he joined my team. And amazing relationship with him. He is an excellent engineer. And then he said, I have a friend from school. Maybe we should recruit him, bring him in. So we hired him and another fantastic developer, right? And I started living vicariously through all of them. I'm like, yeah, he's great. Okay, I feel good about it. And he was really into the open source. So I really coached him like, okay, let's how do we do this at Bloomberg? Let's help. And he joined TIS39, which is Technical Committee 39, the Congress of JavaScript, or how the language evolved. And he submitted the proposal at the time for records and tuples. And he got it all the way through. Now we fast forward to today, it's a thing. So I can say that he, made the JavaScript language better, or at least added new features to it. Better, it's going to be subjective. And the feeling of that, it's so much greater satisfaction for me than coding. Yeah. So that's when I decided, okay, you know what, let's do this managerial thing. Let's head on and let's keep going on it and let's see what it leads us.
Yeah. So what do you think is the biggest lesson you've learned through this journey?
I think it's to stay away from the critical path. I mentioned that in the talk yesterday. Obviously, when the road to be sitting here was, rocky. I made a lot of mistakes. When I started this application that I was talking about, I was so excited about it because it was such a technical challenge that I started coding all of the critical parts. And I didn't realize I was literally blocking the team because the team was waiting on that big infrastructure that was going to connect all the pieces together. And obviously I have to like meet with customers. And I said I was doing all this exploratory work at the same time. So So it's like, okay, wait, that realization of like, you're not here to be the star in the code. You're here to make sure they become the star. So when it really hit me that like I just needed to get out of the way of the tough technical coding, things really start happening. But I really wish people think about this now that are becoming managers for future managers, because they will not have to get burned so many times. And people have to learn sometimes by getting burned. Then go ahead, do the critical part and learn yourself. But that's the one lesson I will tell any future engineering manager.
Gotcha. And then when you made this transition, did you feel like the initiatives that you were leading across Bloomberg, like how did they level up? Like what changed as a result of this personal change for you in terms of the work that you were accomplishing at the company?
I think the customer feedback, like our peers feedback, it there is some very satisfying thing in your colleagues to say, this is awesome. But it's also really a reality when they tell you, this is not that awesome. You've been focusing on this, but what we really needed was this. I think that dual feedback, or like, let's call it honest feedback. Engineers happen to be very blunt.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's great when it comes to application development, because you know that you get a little bit of an unfiltered feedback on the things. And I feel like having that really, really helped us as a team and me build character and build a little bit of a thicker skin, so that you don't think it's personal, you don't take things personal, and you just know that you're delivering products and people like them or not.
Yeah. So we've talked about a lot of things that you've done, your journey to get here where you are now. Let's talk about the future.
Yes.
So you have this track record of successfully building these internal tools. Devs want to use them. They're excited about these branding opportunities. What's the next step?
More applications for now. No,
Just more.
more. No, I moved into a new area. I want to say last year. Within I'm gonna say between 1 and 2 years, I moved to the new area, and what I'm doing now is I'm leading 3 different teams, and basically we're applying on existing applications. So we're applying the techniques of the previous team here and really trying to create that culture and that same results there. Now in here is more interesting because we have a little bit of customer facing applications now and also internal ones. So we really have to balance that out. There is much more risk for disaster. We do things wrong on the customer ones, they have high impact. So I think now what we need to do is we need to learn how to transform existing things, big things. Before it was a little more smaller, right now big things, and see what happens there while developing these teams. We are also building a little bit of a moonshot application where we're changing the entire model of notification at the company. But that's the future. That's the character on my last slide. But that's probably as much as I can say at the moment.
Yeah.
I just want to keep doing what I like and really start training these managers, if you're listening, to be awesome and really to be proud of what they do, because they have amazing software and they have so much potential, right? I want to focus a lot on the human development side of things and really hope that, I'm gambling again. I hope that it works. I hope that what I do has an impact and they develop to become better and better.
Well, you heard it here. If you're an engineering manager at Bloomberg, you should be listening to this podcast and taking Lewis's brilliant words into consideration. So, if I had to summarize, it kind of sounds like what you're saying is, when you started, you picked some of these low-hanging fruit, like a logging issue that a lot of developers have, but now it sounds like it's transitioning to more of like an organizational change, right? Like,
Yeah.
like find the bigger projects, the more impactful things, the stuff that might be harder to take on. But that's great, and I really hope you can get some more support behind you.
Well, me too, because it's, I got to make it to the other side.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you think we've missed that you'd like our audience to know about?
We're here in a conference. I do want to mention that. And I do feel that getting out of your desk, getting out of your day to day to come to these conferences opens your minds so much. And the talks are fun. The talks are interesting. You gather
Mhm.
little bits and pieces of all of them. But really the networking side and walking around to really meet people in your industry, but in all over the world, it really opens your mind.
Yeah.
So I think the one thing I just want to add, and it's a little bit situational because we're here in the dome, is that if you're listening to this podcast and you have not been to a technical conference, tell your manager to support you to go to this, because this is a fantastic way to really grow and keep developing yourself as an engineer and see out of that laser focus that you probably have on your team, on your things, and it's very refreshing. So, yeah, an invitation, an open invitation for people to attend
Yeah,
conferences.
trust me, you're preaching to the choir right now. I've long been a fan of the hallway track at events. It's where I've always found the most value, just having conversations just like this around coffee or whatever else. So yeah, I'm 100% with you on that
Yes.
one. So if people want to follow you or learn more about what you're doing, where do we send them?
Yeah. So social media is the Wild West out there, as we know. I did have a Twitter. I have a Twitter. I kind of like have a tweet there that I'm gonna close my Twitter, but I haven't really posted. I'm there. At Luis Alejo Vega is my handle in all of them. So I do have Twitter, LinkedIn, and I guess that's it for work. I do have a pretty social media presence in YouTube. Outside of work, I'm a travel YouTuber.
Oh, wonderful.
So you can find me there. And threads. I guess if you try all the social medias with Luis Alejo Vega, probably something will come up.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on our show today. This is a wonderful conversation. I love to hear about how Bloomberg is doing all this stuff internally. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.